Gen 1 had some of the most memorable starter Pokemon in the entire franchise, but it does beg the question, if you use them in a playthrough, what is the best possible team for each starter? Well, that's what we're going to be finding out today. Hey everybody, how's it going? Blaine here for Bridge4 Games. Today we're setting out to answer the age-old question, what is the best possible team for each starter in Gen 1? So Gen 1 are amazing games. You know, Mike, Tom, and myself, we are all Gen 1ers. We have played the games so many times, and we have never been able to come to a solid answer on what the best possible team is without, any dispute. So that being said, we're going to be setting out today using our competitive background knowledge, as well as our general knowledge of Gen 1, to create the best possible teams for Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise to play through your games with. Now, a couple caveats I do want to throw in there. We're not going to be allowing any legendary Pokemon, so no Moltres, no Mew, no Mewtwo, so we're not going to be able to have a team of only legendaries. And the reason why is you're not going to be able to get them until late in your playthrough anyways, so honestly, for the majority of your playthrough, they're not going to be that big of a help to you. Now, on top of that, we're not going to be worrying about any version exclusives. Obviously, there are different Pokemon in Red, Blue, and Yellow, and if you can't get two Game Boys together to use a link cable to get all of them, you can always use a trainer fly glitch to access them. Now, I know that some people may not think that that's playing legitimately, but at the end of the day, this is really coming up with the best possible team you can get for Gen 1, pretty much regardless of the circumstances. So that's why we're going to be kind of overlooking that hurdle. And aside from that, I also want to mention, this guide generally is going to apply to the actual Gen 1 games, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. However, the advice does work for Fire Red and Leaf Green, as well as Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu on the Switch. The only difference being that in the other two games, there are more Pokemon available after the story is over, so it does give you a little bit more diversity, but I think the teams that we've come up with are really, really strong no matter what, so they are going to be great options for you no matter which Kanto adventure you're setting out on. So that being said, we're going to go ahead, dive right in, and take a look at the Pokemon and these awesome teams for you to use in your next playthrough. But before we do, I just want to take a second to ask that if you like the videos we have here on the channel, please make sure that you actually like them by hitting that thumbs up button, and of course consider subscribing to the channel to become part of our amazing Pokemon community to make sure that you never miss any of the awesome videos just like this one. So that being said, let's go ahead, grab our backpacks, grab our Pokedexes, and set out on our Kanto adventure, because we're starting off with the best possible team you can have for Venusaur. Alright, now before we dive into the teams and the actual Pokemon that we're going to be using, we probably should talk a little bit about the mechanics of Gen 1. Now, Gen 1, and even in the remakes in Gen 3, Fire Red and Leaf Green, the mechanics are quite a bit different from what you may think of when you think of Pokemon today. Now, one big difference is the physical and special split. Now, you may not know this, but back before Gen 4, each typing didn't have physical and special moves the way it does today. Moves of a certain type were always either physical or special depending on what type they were. So for example, normal type moves were always physical, but fire type moves were always special. Now because of this, it really limits the viability of certain Pokemon, Dragonite in particular, just due to the fact of its typing not really matching up with its stats very well. Now another issue we have to consider is the lack of Pokemon available. Now we're not going to be using any legendary Pokemon for this, and we're not going to be using any regional forms since they wouldn't have been available back in Gen 1 or Gen 3. Now this also is going to significantly limit the types available for Pokemon as well. Obviously because we're looking at Gen 1, we don't have Dark, Fairy, or Steel, meaning that two of our most common cores, Fairy, Dragon, Steel, and Fighting Dark Psychic, don't really have cores here. Now as I said, this guide does apply to Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu, where those typings are available, but even so, the amount of Pokemon they're on is pretty limited, so ultimately the same problems are there as well. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started with Bulbasaur. Alright, so when it comes to Bulbasaur, there are a number of things we have to worry about. So Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur are all very unique because they have dual typings for their entire line. Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur are all going to be grass and poison type. Now, unfortunately, in the Kanto region, this actually isn't all that great. Kanto has a lot of flying Pokemon, and Psychic is very overpowered here. Both of those are big weaknesses for Venusaur. There's also a lot of water Pokemon which would normally be fine, except that they have access to a lot of ice moves, like Ice Beam and Blizzard, so we have to make sure we're covering for that as well. But don't worry, I think I have a pretty good plan to deal with some of those issues. Now, as we talked about in the intro, there really aren't the same number of normal cores that we normally have access to. So really the best bet is going to be a Fire, Water, Grass core, in order to cover most of the things that we're going to see. Now, most of the things that Fire can handle, Venusaur can take care of pretty well. But there are some rare exceptions. If you run into an Ice Pokemon or another Grass and Poison type Pokemon like Victory Bell, you're going to want to have a pretty strong Fire type on hand, just because they can be kind of difficult to deal with. Now, there aren't a ton of options available throughout Kanto, and I want to make sure it's a Pokemon you can get fairly early so you can actually use it throughout your playthrough, so I'm not going to be including Magmar. That being said, the second member of this team is going to be Ninetales because I think its raw firepower is exactly what this team wants. It has a good special stat, which is going to be great for using those fire moves, and also has access to some random utility moves that can help out. So Ninetales, you're number 2 on this team, buddy. Alright, so that being said, now that we have 2 members of our team, I think we need to talk about a theme that's going to be pretty common throughout these Gen 1 games. So earlier I talked about how Psychic is a very, very overpowered typing, and that's really for a couple different reasons. The only thing that had any super effective moves on Psychic in Gen 1 was the Bug typing, and Bug didn't really have any good moves. Really, it's pretty much all Leech Life and Twin Needle, which are both very small attacking moves. Additionally, the only thing that could actually resist Psychic types is Psychic or Bug. So as a result, Psychic is one of the most oppressive typings in the entire game. And because of that, it really shapes what we want to use for our team building here. Typically in my team building guides, I don't like using the same Pokemon over and over again because I feel like it gets very stale, but there is going to be some repetition on these teams just due to the simple necessity of having all that firepower and being able to protect yourself against Psychic Pokemon. So now that I dumped all those words on you, the third member of this team is going to be Alakazam. Look, I don't know what to say. Alakazam is arguably one of the most powerful Pokemon in Gen 1. Now, of course, there's Pokemon like Mew and Mewtwo, but we're not going to be including legendaries in this, so that makes the next best Pokemon option Alakazam. Alakazam is extremely fast and hits like an absolute truck with that incredible special stat. Nothing is really able to slow it down. It outspeeds a ton of Pokemon and deals so much damage. And on top of that, since Psychic resists Psychic, it's actually a really solid Pokemon to bring to matches against Sabrina and Koga. And even if you don't have the ability to trade and make your Kadabra into an Alakazam, it's fine, because Kadabra still has a reasonable amount of bulk, a very high special attack, and a high speed, even for not being a fully evolved Pokemon. It's just a simple fact of Gen 1 that Alakazam is pretty much a must-use Pokemon at all times. So that's why it's going to be on the team. Now, we need to go ahead and finish up our Fire, Water, Grass core here. And we're already going to start double dipping into typings because the fourth member of this team is going to be Slowbro. Now, Slowbro has the Psychic typing along with a great special stat. Now, I'm not going to talk again about why the Psychic typing is so good because I just spent a few minutes of your life doing that, but I am going to say this. Slowbro has access to Psychic, Ice, and Water moves, which can cover a ton of different things. It also has the move Amnesia, which raises the special stat by 2. Now, you may notice that I keep saying special stat and not special attack or special defense. That's because back in Gen 1, the special stat was special attack and special defense. So it gets a move that raises both those stats by 2, which turn it into an absolute tank. And on top of that, it also gets access to Rest. So even though it has a fairly slow speed stat, you can make it so unbelievably powerful and then heal it up all the time, where most Pokemon just don't have answers to what they're being faced with. So given that this Pokemon gives us an incredible strategy, protection against Psychic, and a great Fire, Water, Grass core, it's no wonder why it's number 4 on the team. Now let's take a look at the team and see kind of where we're at right now. Ninetales does have a weakness to ground, but it's pretty easily covered by Venusaur and Slowbro, so we don't need to really worry about that. One thing I am worried about though is Electric and Flying. So Venusaur, as we mentioned, is very weak to Flying, and Slowbro is weak to Electric. So we need to come up with a Pokemon that can really help those two things out. And if possible, I'd like to use the attributes of both of those Pokemon to help any weaknesses that Pokemon may have. So with that in mind, Pokemon number 5 for this team is going to be Rhydon. Now, Rhydon is an incredibly powerful rock and ground type Pokemon. It's not very fast, but it is very bulky and hits very, very hard. So why is it the perfect fit for this team? Well, there are a ton of reasons. So first and foremost, it is ground type, so it's going to be immune to all the electric attacks you're going to be facing. It also is rock type, meaning that it resists flying attacks. Now, flying is a very good offensive type because there's not a lot of things that do resist it. However, with rock being one, that gives you a lot of outs to all the flying Pokemon that are in the region. Now, with that in mind, Rhydon isn't really a fan of seeing grass or water type or fighting type Pokemon. Hey, look at that! Water Pokemon are covered by Venusaur, grass type Pokemon are covered by Ninetales, and fighting type Pokemon are covered by Alakazam. Oh yeah, and if we happen to run into any other ground type Pokemon that may cause some issues, Slowbro and Venusaur can take that sucker out, no problem. So we have 5 members of the team locked down pretty tight now, and they all work really well together. So who is going to be number 6? So as I looked at the team, I realized that we have most of the types covered pretty well. But one thing we may run into is some bulky normal types. Things like Tauros, Kangaskhan, Snorlax, Chansey. All of those can be random difficult Pokemon to punch through just because they're so bulky. And honestly, I think punching through is probably the best strategy here, because the 6th member of the team is going to be Machamp. Now look, Machamp is not a Pokemon that's known for a lot of move diversity, but what it does very well. Machamp does have a pretty mediocre speed stat, I grant you, but it does have incredible offensive stats and decent bulk as well. Now, most likely you are going to be running 4 fighting type moves on it, but even with that being the case, most of the times when you bring in Machamp, it's going to be able to one-hit KO what you're facing down, so really it doesn't matter all that much. Honestly, this team is just very well positioned for Gen 1 games, and if you happen to use this team in Gen 3 or Gen 7, Machamp's fighting typing is going to be even better, letting you punch through some of the random Dark or Steel-type Pokemon that may show up. All in all, I think these 5 Pokemon complement Venusaur very, very well, and give the team a ton of answers to anything it may encounter in the Kanto region. Alright, now that Venusaur is taken care of, let's go ahead and hop over to Squirtle. Now, Squirtle is quite a bit different than Venusaur because it has less weaknesses, and also it has the same typing throughout its entire line. It is pure water all the way from Squirtle to Wartortle to Blastoise. And even though water is one of the best typings with only having 2 weaknesses, and being able to check a lot of others, it still needs some help here and there. So let's see what we can do. Alright, now as any competitive player will know, one of the things that water-type Pokemon don't like dealing with is other water-type Pokemon. They typically don't have a very good way to break through, so that's something we're definitely going to need to address. And anybody who's used Blastoise through a playthrough also knows that it has no real way to status any Pokemon. So any Pokemon that we add to the number 2 slot is going to need to have some status moves and be able to check those bulky waters. Enter Parasect. Now, I gotta be honest, Parasect is not a very strong Pokemon competitively, but I think it's not just good on this team, I think it is great on this team. So first off, Parasect has access to Spore, which is a 100% accurate sleeping move. So yeah, need to put some legendaries to sleep? There you go. And now obviously Parasect also has grass moves to help out with those bulky water types, which is going to be fantastic. But one thing I really enjoy about Parasect is that it's also a bug type with a fairly high special stat. So why is this so important? Well, remember those Psychic Pokemon? It has access to some Bug-type moves to use on them for super effective damage, and it's going to be able to take those Psychic attacks really, really well, given that it's resisted and also is fairly bulky. Now, Parasect may not be my favorite Pokemon, and it's honestly pretty creepy, given that it's a cicada that's been possessed by a zombie mushroom. By the way, if you want to know more about that, I'll link the video ahead right now. But in any event, I think Parasect is a fantastic partner to Blastoise, and is going to be a huge threat on this team. Now, we have water and grass taken care of, so let's get a Fire-type Pokemon on this team. I thought about it a little bit, and again, I don't really want to go with Magmar or something like Moltres, so I decided to go for Arcanine. Now, Arcanine does have a decent special stat, and has some really nice natural bulk. It doesn't have the widest move pool, but it does have some good fire moves, and a lot of utility moves as well. Honestly, I wish there was more to say about this one, but I think it's just really awesome on the team. One thing that I do think is great that really kind of helps to explain why Fire, Water, Grass cores are so strong is because Arcanine is going to love switching into those fire moves that the Parasect is not going to want to take. But the things that check Arcanine, the water types, the rock types, and the ground types, are all covered and easily dispatched by Blastoise. So I think that we really do have a pretty locked down 3 Pokemon so far on the team. Now, here's where things might start repeating a little bit. The number 4 member of this team is going to be Alakazam again. Yeah, I know, you're probably going to be tired of hearing this Pokemon's name by the end of the video, but again, it's just so strong, there's no reason not to use it. So, the 4th member of the team is going to be Alakazam, and I think that ultimately the team is going to really benefit from it. Now, for number 5, again, I kind of was at a weird point where I didn't really know what to do. I wanted something that had a lot of coverage moves and just a lot of options to use in the game. After thinking about this for a while, I ended up going with Nidoking. Now, you might be wondering why I'm going with Nidoking. Well, there's actually a couple different reasons that I think it's a really good addition to the team. Now, yes, it is going to be ground and poison type, so it is going to be weak to Psychic. However, given that we have Alakazam on the team and the Pokemon that we're going to be adding in slot 6, in addition to Parasect, I think we're going to be pretty okay. But at the end of the day, Nidoking really is a king. It is the king of coverage. So aside from the fact that it learns the very scary Thrash fairly early, allowing it to do a ton of damage to early teams, it also gets access to the following: Bubble Beam, Ice Beam, Blizzard, Thunder, Thunderbolt, Earthquake, Fire Blast, Rock Slide, and Surf. So really whatever extra moves you're going to need are going to be found on this guy. I also really like having some access to some ground type moves because the team does have a little bit of an issue with rock types. Now Parasect and Arcanine are both weak to rock, and even though Parasect and Blastoise can cover rock type moves fairly well, it's still something I don't want to have too many vulnerabilities to. And again, electric Pokemon are something you are going to find in the region, so I like having an answer for that too. Having a ground typing makes it immune to electric, meaning it can switch in and take those hits, so that Blastoise doesn't have to. Oh yeah, and you know about the Game 1 glitch with accuracy boosts? So Nidoking gets access to Horn Drill and Fissure. Now, due to the way the game was actually coded in Gen 1, if you used an accuracy boosting move, it would actually boost those one-hit KOing moves as well. So by using an X accuracy on Nidoking, you're able to give it almost max accuracy, meaning it can just click those one-hit KOing moves over and over again. So if you don't want to have to drag out a long battle, just send out Nidoking, boost its accuracy, and you can start sweeping no problem. And now if we look at the team so far, all the weaknesses are pretty much covered, but the team is by and large a very offensively designed team. Even some of our more defensive Pokemon like Blastoise and Parasect aren't really all that bulky compared to some of the other options that exist in the game. So with that in mind, the 6th member of the team is going to be Snorlax. Now aside from being one of the most iconic Pokemon in Gen 1, Snorlax is actually a tank when it comes to battling. With great bulk and decent offensive stats, Snorlax also learns a lot of different moves that can be really helpful throughout a playthrough. It has a fairly high special stat, meaning that even though it doesn't resist Psychic, it's still going to be able to take a lot of hits. On top of that, since it's only weak to fighting, it's able to take a ton of hits and switch in to cover hits from any of its allies. And the best part of all is when he takes a lot of hits and he gets down into the red, all you have to do is click rest and he'll heal all that right back up. Not only is Snorlax amazingly defensive, it's also very offensive, having a variety of moves across a very wide move pool. It even has access to some stat boosting moves like Amnesia, and even has access to Reflect to make it survive some of those physical hits a little bit better. It may seem like a bit of an afterthought on this team, but honestly, Snorlax is a fantastic fit here, and really works well given that we have a lot of fast Pokemon, medium speed Pokemon, and slow Pokemon. I think it's just an incredible fit, giving us another awesome team to use in the Kanto region. And alright, that brings us down to the most popular starter, Charizard. Now look, I know, don't at me telling me that Venusaur or Blastoise is better. I get it. Everybody has their favorites, but it's undeniable that Charizard is going to be the most popular one for pretty much the rest of eternity. Now let's talk about Charizard, because he actually has quite a few problems. Now Charizard does actually have a few interesting things going for it. Unlike Squirtle the Blastoise, it actually does change its type throughout its evolutionary line. Charmander and Charmeleon are pure fire, but Charizard is fire and flying. Now, while this is cool because it means that your starter Pokemon can learn Fly, it is a bit of a downer because it's very weak to Water, Electric, and Rock as a result, with Rock being a 4x weakness. We definitely need to make sure that we cover this weakness and cover it really well. But alright, first things first, let's go ahead and work on our core. So we like, as always, to have a Fire Water Grass core because it covers pretty much everything you're going to encounter in the region. Now again, we've talked about how OP Psychic typing is, and because of that, I'm going to go back to Slowbro here as well. Now we already covered why it's so good, but again, it's really going to be a Pokemon that's awesome at just taking those hits. Charizard can do a lot of damage offensively, but it's not a very defensive Pokemon, so it needs something with a little bit more padding to really take some of those big hits to make sure it can survive. As we know, Slowbro has a ton of this, and has access to that amazing move Amnesia. This thing can definitely take all the water hits and swing back with a ton of firepower. As far as I'm concerned, this is an absolute no-brainer on the team. Now, before we actually move on, I've noticed that now we have another electric weakness. So I think it's about high time we deal with some of those before we move on to finish the core. Now, even though it's also a repeat, the third member of the team is going to be Rhydon. Now I know, you're probably sick of me using Pokemon over and over again, but just hear me out. Rhydon is able to resist Rock, and because of its natural bulk, is able to take all of those hits and pretty much not even be scratched. In addition, as we know, Rhydon is a ground type, meaning it's immune to electric types. And on top of that, as we know, Rhydon doesn't like grass-type Pokemon, which Charizard can easily take care of. And for any of those pesky water moves, we have Slowbro. But now that we have some of the major weaknesses covered, we really do need to figure out that Fire, Water, Grass core. Now again, I thought about this for kind of a long time, and I decided that the best grass Pokemon we can use is Exeggutor. Now, there's actually a few really solid reasons why I made this call. So first and foremost, it is of course a Psychic and Grass-type Pokemon. In Gen 1, for some reason, most Grass-type Pokemon are also part Poison-type. This means that an overwhelming majority of them are going to be weak to Psychic. Exeggutor is able to turn this on its head and actually make that Psychic weakness into a Psychic resistance by being part Psychic type. I also really enjoy the fact that because it's not Poison type, it's able to resist ground type attacks instead of being neutral to them like something like a Vileplume or Victory Bell would be. Now admittedly this is a bit of a corner case, but it does really help Rhydon cover some of those ground type attacks it's not going to want to take. But as if this wasn't crazy enough, Exeggutor has a base special stat of 125, meaning that it effectively has 125 for special attack and special defense. Now look, in the days of something like a Primal Kyogre, this isn't too much, but back then this was really high, meaning its offensive stats are crazy good. On top of that too, Exeggutor can be used pretty much any way you want to use it. You can use attacks with a lot of status moves, you can even use things like Poison Powder and Leech Seed to kind of whittle away at an enemy. Now, even though Exeggutor is slow, it's just fantastic on this team, and all of its weaknesses are really well covered by everything else we have so far. Now, normally I would be pretty hesitant about dipping so heavily into all the Psychic types, but I think in Gen 1 it doesn't really matter. Even though we made ourselves pretty vulnerable to Bug with the choices we've made so far, it really doesn't matter because no Bug type can ever get through Charizard. This team is definitely highlighting some of the issues with Gen 1, but it is an awesome team to use, and it also gets to feature some of my favorite Pokemon, and I'm definitely not complaining about that. So now we have 4 Pokemon locked in, I think we need the other 2. Now Pokemon number 5 probably shouldn't be any surprise. It's going to be Alakazam again. Now look, I'm not going to cheer for Alakazam any more than I already have. Just keep in mind, it's probably the best Pokemon in the entire game, so there's a reason we're using it. And it's also the reason why we have 3 Psychic types on the team. But given that all the things that hinder Psychic are pretty much non-existent, I don't think it's a problem at all. If anything, I think it's just one of the best choices we can make. And that brings us to number 6. Now, one thing I did notice about the team, with the exception of Rhydon, we are almost exclusively special attackers. And again, some of those bulky Pokemon that we're going to have to deal with are going to be the bulky Water-type Pokemon and the bulky Normal-type Pokemon. Yeah, if you've been paying attention, you have a pretty good idea of who number 6 is on the team. The 6th Pokemon on this team is going to be Machamp. Now again, I know, Machamp is kind of a situational Pokemon, but just hear me out. Most normal type Pokemon have decently high special stats, meaning that even though we're rocking all these awesome psychic type Pokemon, it's still going to be a little hard to punch through. In addition, a lot of water type Pokemon also have fairly high special stats, meaning that punching through on that side of things is going to be a little tricky as well. That's why I think Machamp is probably the solid option here. We need something that's just a really strong physical attacker to literally just punch our problems away. And the fact that it's weak to Psychic really isn't an issue because we have that so well covered on the team already. So at the end of the day, just due to the Mon selection and the requirements that we needed, Machamp was the clear choice here, finishing off this team. And you know what, I have to say that overall, this team is fantastic. It features a ton of really amazing Pokemon that all cover each other really well, and I'll be honest, if in Gen 1 I saw this team, I'd be pretty darn worried. But there you have it, that is all 3 of the teams for each of the starters in the Kanto region. Let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite, and let me know which one you're going to try next time you boot up those Gen 1 games. And of course, if you have any suggestions how to make these teams even better, I know you're not going to hesitate to tell me, but go ahead and drop those in the comments too. I love hearing your guys' feedback, and I want to know which directions you take your teams in if you had the same decisions I had to make. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoy these teams, and I encourage you to boot them up into your games, take them out on an adventure, and go become the very best like nobody ever was. Alright, so there you have it, the best possible teams for each starter Pokemon in the Kanto region, according to us here at Bridge4 Games. I hope you guys liked this video because I had an absolute blast making it, and I can't wait to make more of these videos and share them with you. And, by the way, the best possible teams for each starter Pokemon in Gen 2 is already being made as we speak, so keep an eye out for that because it's going to be showing up very, very soon. So, that being said, everybody, if you did enjoy the video, please make sure that you absolutely impact that like button in the face, and as always, consider subscribing to the channel to become part of our amazing Pokemon community to make sure that you never miss any of the awesome videos like this one. So, that being said, everybody, I've been Blaine for Bridge4 Games. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me. Remember that the best Pokemon games are the ones that you love to play, and the proper ways to play them are however you have the most fun. I hope each and every one of you have a happy, epic, awesome, and amazing day, and I will see you in the next video. See you around. Bye-bye!